The Denver Nuggets pick up their third straight win and their second straight win on the road, thanks to Austin Rivers. We're going to get into all of that and talk about the rest of this road trip coming up on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into the Locked On Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares from DNVR. Matt Moore, not with us tonight. He's going to take the night off, but he will be back rejoining us tomorrow or Friday. So we'll look forward to hearing his thoughts as the Nuggets continue their winning streak and their hot play as of late. They pick up the win in Brooklyn against the very shorthanded Brooklyn Nets team. Nuggets win 124-118. I laugh because if you recall, when this was the makeup game. When this game was scheduled, a month and a half ago, it was the height of this Omicron spike. And the Nets were getting hit with this, and I think they were down to I think the limit is if you have 8 available players, you can play. The Nets were that team that had 9 available players, but they had a couple guys that you suspect were like, hey, man, tight hamstring, he's out, this or that. So the NBA ends up saying, hey, we're going to reschedule this game. We'll get to it a little bit later. Of course, that condenses the schedule. It turns this 5-game East Coast road trip in 9 days into a 6-game road trip in 9 days. So you get the makeup game thinking, okay, we'll try to make it fair. We'll make it fair to everybody. Well, tonight, there's no Kevin Durant. There's no Kyrie Irving. There's no James Harden. James Harden even set the game out. So it ended up being almost the exact same team that was available to the Brooklyn Nets, 6 weeks ago, whenever this was supposed to be. So it's kind of funny how it broke out this way. I mean, this isn't really any one person to blame or anything like that, but it's kind of silly that they had to reschedule and move everything around and condense this only for the game to go almost certainly exactly like what it would have gone if they would have played it way back then. So Nuggets do pick up the win, though. It was a bit of a grind of a game. But you know what? Right now, a win is a win for the Nuggets as they improve to 26-21. The story of this game, in my opinion, or at least the lead story of this game, was Austin Rivers, who went for 25 points tonight, including 7 of 10 from the three-point line. Austin Rivers is a hilarious player, especially a hilarious scorer, because most of the time, he doesn't make a lot of three-pointers. I mean, he's a pretty streaky shooter, but I think he's streaky as in when he gets hot, he hits 7 out of 10, 6. He has big three-point scoring nights. And tonight when he got hot, you kind of got the sense when he was hitting all the threes, you got the sense that he was going to make them, every shot he took looked good, looked in rhythm. And even Jokic was looking for him at times. And it's like, yeah, okay, this is, he's got the hot hand, feed him. And it was fantastic. I also thought, by the way, that he did a very nice job defensively. Cam Thomas, I don't know how many people remember Cam Thomas in the draft, but he was a guy, second rounder. He's a guy that's going I think he was a second rounder, but I remember he was a guy that you watch his highlights. If you just watch his highlights, as most people do for the draft, you look at this guy and you go, my goodness, this dude, how is he not a lottery pick? He's a microwave scorer, this or that. But then you kind of dig a little bit deeper in. It's like he's pretty much just a scorer, like an elite scorer. He's got great footwork. Some of those step backs he had tonight were like, how do you guard that type stuff? But he's not a very dynamic player. He's going to have his head down. He's going to be looking for a shot. He's going to be gunning. Well, tonight he had it going. He was cooking. And I thought Austin Rivers did the best job on him. In fact, there were times late. This became this is the epitome of the NBA season. Tonight's game between the Brooklyn Nets featuring Kyrie, KD, and James Harden, and then Nuggets with Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. It actually came down to Cam Thomas versus Austin Rivers. Go figure. And both guys were great. Both guys made a bunch of shots in this game. Cam Thomas goes 4 of 6. He actually goes for 25 points. Austin Rivers goes for 25 points. But I thought late in this game, those two actually continued to duel, and Austin Rivers was able to get a lot of stops and just make some plays and make Cam Thomas kind of come back to earth. So I thought he was, no question, as Michael Malone puts it, the Bud Light player of the game. He was fantastic, and it was nice to see. And even a bit of a trend with Austin Rivers right now, as I'm pulling up his stats here as I'm talking about him, but he started to play a little bit better over this recent stretch, really since having that talk with Michael Malone. He got a DMP, coach's decision, against the Memphis Grizzlies. After that, he followed it up with an 11-point game. He goes 4 of 7 from the field. Followed that up with a 10-point game. He goes 2 of 2 from the three-point line, 3 of 4 In both of those games, the first one, 33.5 minutes and the start. Next one, a start in 27 minutes. So he starts playing a lot of minutes. And then, of course, tonight he gets 26 minutes, goes 8 of 11 from the field, and was absolutely fantastic. The reason they won this game, and you love to see it. I mean, Austin Rivers, he does provide. The Nuggets' second unit has so many guys that have talents and they have real weaknesses. Austin Rivers, his talents are that he can defend. He's a really strong defender, I think, a really good defender. And he can shoot every now and then. He gets really hot. He has a little bit of a one-on-one game, although I think it's prettier than it is effective. Like, he's got a really great jab step, really good crossover. But we saw tonight, he actually got saved late in the game. He had a drive to the basket, like a really good move, but it didn't beat his man. Help comes over, and he tried to drop it off to Zeke Naji at the last second. Fortunately, it bounced off some opponent's leg, and Denver retained possession. But so I think his one-on-one game is maybe just a pinch underrated in terms of, can he like collapse a defense? But nonetheless, he does have some talents, and when he makes those threes, that's when his effectiveness, his usefulness on this Nuggets roster goes through the roof. So good to see him playing well, and I'm really curious to see if that's a trend that can kind of continue. And if so, maybe he's a guy that leapfrogs some people into steady rotation minutes. If you kind of look at him over the last 10 games, he's got a couple games where he did not dress, one game where he did not play. So he's been a guy. And then even if you look at the minute totals, he's got a couple 16-minute games sprinkled in with 35-minute games. So maybe this is something that earns him, his good play of late is maybe something that earns him a little bit more minutes. Nikola Jokic also was good in this game. He goes 8 of 13, and he was good, not great. It's funny, like if you look at Jokic's numbers over this stretch, this is Jokic's worst game in 2 weeks. But it was still a very solid game. His stat total on the night, he goes for 26 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. It is another in a long list of games where he led both teams in points, rebounds, and assists. And then the 8 of 13 scoring shows, he was very effective. What was interesting about Jokic tonight was he wasn't necessarily aggressive, especially in the early go. I joked about this, but you kind of think it's true. The NBA might do away with the Euro foul. They might get rid of it. They might make it like the, right now, like the clear path foul, which, by the way, there was the worst clear path foul called in this game that I've ever seen. I can't remember who it was, but somebody stops, and a Nuggets player bumps into them. So it was like a deliberate stopping, and it created a clear path foul. The clear path foul is supposed to be like, don't let a guy stop a fast break if he's not in front of you. It's kind of designed to get rid of the Euro foul. It's not designed for players to stop on a dime so you run into them and then you get, the ball. So it was kind of annoying that they called this one today. It was actually it was Will Barton. Yeah, it was really ridiculous. Adam, can we get some Austin Rivers hype? I see. I thought I just did that. It was 7 minutes. I was looking at the clock. It was 7 minutes all on Austin Rivers. I don't know if we've ever done that in the show. So that was it. Hope that was enough hype. I do think he can be a solid part of the rotation. But the Euro foul, Jokic, he does this sometimes. When Jokic gives, it's almost like karma, because Jokic is never in foul trouble. Or I shouldn't say never. He's very rarely in foul trouble. But you can tell that if he gives a Euro foul or a take foul in the backcourt in the first 2 minutes of a game, it's almost like bad juju where you're like, Jokic's going to be in foul trouble now. It's just going to happen. I guarantee it's something that's going to happen. Well, sure enough, he gives a Euro foul very, very early. The Nuggets were rolling. They got off to like a 17-4 start or something. It was the first unit back whole again with Will Barton in the lineup. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to blow the doors off him. Jokic gives a take foul, and you're like, don't know about that. Then he gets a second foul almost immediately after that. Michael Malone let him play for a minute or two, but he pulled him out pretty early, like 3 or 4 minutes before when he typically would pull him out. And I thought it was one of those things that it just disrupted the game. I think Denver was on pace for a blowout win. That first unit was rolling. You're on pace. You're going to get it. Jokic ends up checking out. You get to a weird rotation, and the rest of the game was just clunky. So maybe it was always going to be clunky. Maybe the Nuggets just had a hot start, but it was always going to fall back to earth. But that kind of set the tone for a game of like, okay, this is going to be an ugly, weird game. And that's exactly what it was. The Nuggets get outscored in the second quarter, 37-25. Even when Jokic comes back in, not really a ton of momentum. They did so they go into the half down 11 points, did a great job in the third quarter. That first unit had 2 stretches in this game, the start of the first quarter, start of the second quarter, that were absolutely fantastic. And I believe that's the real Nuggets. Like, that group has really played well. The numbers have been staggering. I've been really, really impressive. Joe Rush had a stat that the starting lineup with Monte Barton, Jeff Green, Aaron Gordon, and Jokic was the best 5-man unit in the NBA, minimum 500 minutes this season. So of all the like high volume 5-man combos, and it's a really good lineup. It has been really good. And I think that what we saw to start the game and what we saw to start the second half, that's indicative of the Nuggets have this punch in them that's really, really good. And as they start to get better and better players back, I think it's going to be solid. But Jokic, he still went for 26, 10, and 8. And down the stretch, he made a lot of really big plays, including assists, including buckets, including rebounds. So even though this wasn't one of those beautiful Jokic games and the stat line was weaker, I know it's weird to say 26, 10, and 8 is a weaker stat line than we're used to seeing out of him. Actually, it's his averages, 26, 10, and 8. It's just like 3 fewer rebounds is the only thing that's different on this. But it's weaker than what we had seen over the last 6, 7 games. But I think it's honestly just that we're spoiled. And also, second night of a back-to-back, Yoke did just enough to get the Nuggets by in this one. So he gets a passing grade from me, no question about it. Want to remind you guys about Bet Online. They'd like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue to march towards the playoffs and beyond. Bet Online remains the number one spot for all of the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year, a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to get started from football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts. A lively chat. I want to remind everybody that you want to sign up for our YouTube page as we continue to grow in followers. And now that we're doing these live late at night, it's fun to be able to get some interaction. I see Zamora, who's always in here, and we really appreciate you, Zamora, always joining us for these live ones. Have they lost their minutes at all this season? I'm sure they have. I'm sure yeah, I'm sure you are happy that Matt's not doing that ad read. Oh my God, unbelievable. I'm sure that they have, but they have a lot of nights like tonight where they just look really strong. They just go through and like they have these stretches. Like even though I want to look it up because I want to see what the numbers actually say for tonight's game, tonight's starting lineup. Let me see if I could pull it up in here on the box score. No, they don't have it that way. I'm sure I could find it another way. But so I'm sure they've lost some minutes, but they got a lot of just stretches that are really promising. To me, the big runs are as important to me. They're like really, they tell a story to me, even if they kind of get complacent at times. And they can give up runs like when they get up 17-4. Okay, you coughed up a little bit. It's important. That means something. But I'm more interested in the fact that you have these lineups that can really, really dominate. So it actually finished, as I'm looking right now, only a +5. Nope, that's not right. They had to have played the most minutes. Just a +1, actually. So that starting lineup actually only, not a net rating +1, an overall +1. So they played 17.7 minutes. But again, that had to do more, in my opinion, with some of those like bad stretches, coughed up lead and this or that. Yeah, win 3 of 4 stints is all it takes. You're right. That bench unit can survive past that. And that brings us to our bench unit. DeMarcus Cousins, it's funny when you look at his stats over the last couple games, they're really not good. And if you look at some of the individual moments and things that you think about, like if you just think about some of the plays, a lot of them have been pretty bad this year. And I'm pulling up his stats right now as I'm talking on the season with the Denver Nuggets, just so I can have him in front of me. He is averaging, so they're 3-0 in the Boogie era. He's averaging 13 minutes. He's averaging 6 points per game on 27% shooting. 27%. He's grabbing 6.3 rebounds, which is crazy for 12 minutes. That's a really good rate. He has 1 assist. He has 10 turnovers. Not 1 assist, 10 turnovers, and he's been a -3. So you look at it and you go, individually, Boogie has not been very good. Tonight, he did make some 3-pointers, and he had some offensive rebounds and putbacks that were really good. But in all 3, here's what's, I think, both encouraging but also sort of curious, is that while DeMarcus Cousins hasn't been good, the second unit has been fantastic, or at least relative to expectations and relative to what they have been for most of this season. And you start to think, should you be more encouraged that Boogie, coming off of injuries, hasn't necessarily shot the ball well, or, his foul rate has been bad? Should you be more encouraged because, hey, he's probably going to get better from here, and that second unit is going to get better? That's kind of where I lean. It's interesting because I don't know if DeMarcus Cousins is in the long-term plans for the Nuggets. They signed him to a 10-day. I imagine they're going to sign him to another 10-day and then play it by ear from there. But he certainly has brought a dynamic that has worked so far against Detroit twice and now against the Brooklyn Nets. And if you were Tim Conley and Michael Malone and DeMarcus Cousins himself, if you were to draw up, hey, we're adding a guy on a 10-day, what the first 3 games we want to see him play, Detroit 2 times and Brooklyn with this lineup without Kevin Durant and all those guys, that would probably be your go-to. So it was a nice ease into things. Everybody kind of gets to know him, see how he plays, his rhythm, this or that. But there are bigger tests ahead. Maybe not necessarily against New Orleans, although that will be a test in and of itself because they're a little bit better. But certainly against Milwaukee, certainly against Utah. I mean, that Utah game, if he's still around for that one, Utah rolls with Rudy Gay at center for their second unit, as we know. So DeMarcus Cousins versus Rudy Gay, that's going to be a real style fight, and I'm really curious to see how that one goes. So if he stays with the team, I think right now I don't really have strong takes on Boogie other than he seems to have made some coherent sense with that second unit. Like they seem to come together and fit a little bit more. Also, you start to see the guys that are playing right now. I mean, obviously Facu is playing. He played 20 minutes tonight. He had 2 points, 6 assists, 1 steal. It's interesting. We talk when they lose, we look at that score and we think, okay, but he can't score. He's not a threat to do this. He only took 1 shot tonight. He got 2 points, both of them from the foul line. But it didn't matter. That second unit still was a positive, and Facu himself was a +3. Zeke Naji, I think, fits really nicely next to DeMarcus Cousins. I think it's becoming more and more clear that right now he's most comfortable as a 4. We mentioned this the other day, I think over at DNVR, but with Zeke Naji, such an interesting one, because one of the things I think about a lot when I watch Zeke Naji's play is that you think about a future lineup that Michael Porter Jr., he's a key piece of this team, at least at the moment, and I think probably going forward. Aaron Gordon, okay, so you got your starting forwards. You add Zeke Naji as the third forward off of the bench, obviously. If you pair Zeke Naji and Michael Porter Jr., I like that lineup. That's 2 knockdown elite shooters. I mean, right now, Zeke Naji is a better three-point shooter than Michael Porter. I don't think he is. I don't think that'll play out over 1,000 shots. But nonetheless, I think both guys are A+, like 90th, 95th percentile catch and shoot corner 3-point shooters. They're very good at it, and they have the added bonus of they're both 6'11", 6'10", 6'11", somewhere in there. So if you're talking about not a starting lineup, but Nuggets stagger guys, if you were to pull Aaron Gordon out first, and as teams usually start to bring players in, usually as the rotation comes in, usually it starts to lean a little bit more offensive than defense. So if you bring in, you got Zeke Naji in one quarter, Michael Porter in the other, and you have Jokic there, and you say, okay, we're going to stagger Jamal Murray, we're going to bring Monte in, we're going to stagger Will Barton, we're going to bring Bones in. You get a lineup like that, and you say, okay, I've got 2 pick-and-roll partners for Jokic. I got Bones Highland, I got Monte Morris. I've got Jokic on the court. And I've got 2 guys in the corner that you absolutely, under no circumstances, can ever help off of. To me, I look at that and I go, that's a hell of a staggered lineup. That's not a starting lineup. Like if you have to go up against Anthony Davis or Giannis Antetokounmpo, like it's not going to line up that's going to be super effective against those guys. But against other teams of staggered lineups for 3-4 minutes to end the first quarter, to me, that is a lineup that we are going to see Warriors-esque type runs on the opposing teams. You're going to see, not every night, but every now and then you're going to see Michael Porter and Zeke Naji combine for 4 3-pointers in 4 possessions or 5 possessions. You're going to see Jokic getting to the rim because all of a sudden the made threes are starting to stretch the defense out. And I think that's a lineup that, let's say the starters have a good run. They're up 4 points. You start to stagger. There's 4 minutes left in the first quarter. I could see them going on like 16-4 runs, and all of a sudden Denver's up 15 points. But then let's go the other way. Let's say you actually bench Michael Porter Jr. and you leave Aaron Gordon on and have Zeke Naji out there. I also think that works. Then you have 2 very good perimeter defenders that can switch 1 through 4, right? You're fine having Aaron Gordon switch. You're fine having Zeke Naji. He can move his feet. And then you still have 1 3-point shooter in Zeke Naji. You have Aaron Gordon as an athlete and a slasher. I think that lineup works as well. So Denver might actually end up having with Zeke Naji a 3-man forward rotation that really works. And then, of course, Jeff Green. I mean, I don't know what the future holds for Jeff Green. I've really enjoyed him in Denver and his time in Denver. So maybe he's a guy that Denver looks to bring back. He's just another guy that sort of fits into a 4-forward rotation that, to me, all makes a lot of sense. So just something that gets me excited when I watch Zeke Naji, and I think he looks his best at the power forward position. I think that works. That sort of extrapolates something that Denver can call upon down the line. I thought Will Barton was good in this one too, for the most part. 21 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. He filled up the entire stat sheet, goes 3 of 8 from 3. There were some cringy Barton moments in there. There were some plays that you kind of like shake your head at. There were some shots that you're like, okay, you got a little thirsty there, kind of stepped a little bit too aggressive, but whatever. Tonight, this was one of those take the good with the bad. And Will Barton had a lot of good in this game. You don't put up 21-10, 4-2, and 1 if you weren't doing something at least pretty productive. Those are the notes on the game. I thought it was very good. Like I said, I enjoy kind of thinking about some of these guys in the future where they belong, including Zeke Naji. It is noteworthy that Bones Highland did not play in this game. He got a DMP coach's decision. And as we start to look at, okay, what is the fallout of the Bryn Forbes trade and the DeMarcus Cousins addition? Well, DeMarcus Cousins is 3 for 3 now, playing in all the games. Bryn Forbes is 3 for 3 now, playing in all 3 games since he's been here, or maybe 4 for 4 actually with him. So those guys seem to be part of the rotation. Campazzo, Rivers, Naji off the bench. JaMychal Green is back. I worry Bones Highland might be out of the rotation until further notice. Of course, there will be more injuries and there'll be opportunities for him, but I'm wondering if the default now is that Bones Highland is the 11th man in this 10-man rotation. And even Davon Reed, who got in for like 1 second, he played like at the end of the first quarter, I believe. Even Davon Reed maybe is slightly ahead of him on that depth chart. So interesting for Bones. We'll have to see what that, the rest of this road trip, what that looks like. And we'll talk about that on the other side of this break. Scrolling through the comments here and see if you guys have any questions for me. How are we going to get Davon Reed a full roster spot so he can play in the playoffs? I don't think that matters for this season. Like the NBA has made some alterations. Typically, two-way players, they weren't supposed to play in the playoffs. I don't think that is the case this year. I'd have to check, but I'll have to take a look at that. How do you feel about the Bones Cam Thomas comp, Adam? I don't like it at all because in large part, Cam Thomas is a really good scorer. I'll tell you, I watched when we were doing the draft. I actually hate it. You guys know me. You know well enough the type of players I like and don't like. Cam Thomas, definitely a player I don't like. Elite scorer. You get that guy in a pro-am or a summer league game, he's going to put up buckets and you're going to be like, my God, how is this guy not a star? But I don't think he has very good vision at all. Like he is the type of guy that is just he's a straight hooper. I think the thing about Bones that is so promising, while I think he's less dynamic as a scorer, as a one-on-one scorer for sure, he crosses me. I mean, he has a lot better vision. He's a really good passer, not just like an okay passer. I think he's a really good passer, and I think he could be a really good pick and roll player. So to me, I don't really think that they're much of a comparison. I think I don't know about that. I see a lot of people saying Justin Holiday or Torrey Craig would be fine. Here's the thing. Those guys are both good. They definitely would be in the rotation, probably ahead of Davon Reed. But again, are they ahead then of Austin Rivers? Because that's probably where you're going. Are they ahead of Bryn Forbes? I don't know. Denver's got a lot of guys right now. I think George Karl's really talked me into this, but I really think it's best if you have 8 guys that are your guys, and then you have 1 or 2 guys here or there, utility player here or there. Right now, I think Denver has like 6 guys, and they have 6 more you can mix and match. And I just think that could be really, really tough. So maybe as a next year type piece. But I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see what happens in terms of if they add another player that could be getting rotation minutes. So the Nuggets start this road trip 2-0. They're now 3-0. Just overall, they're only their third 3-game winning streak of the year. They picked up a 5-game winning streak early on in November. Houston, Miami, Indiana, Atlanta, and Portland. Those were all at home. They had a 5-game homestand, and they cleaned up. They had another 3-game homestand, including 2 road games when they beat the Clippers, the Warriors, and then Houston. All 3 of those games coming on the road. So now you get 2 out of 3 on the road as a little 3-game winning streak, and certainly seem to be playing some of their best ball of the entire season. You can also look at this and say, Denver this year is 25-17 without Jokic. They're a 50-win team basically so far when Jokic is in the lineup. They went 1-4, I believe, without him. So you look at that and you think you're disguised a little bit when you think about all the things that have gone wrong this season. Guys that have been out of the lineup. Barton's been out and Morante's been out, this or that. Just having Jokic in the lineup, the team has actually been pretty good. And then even overall, 26-21, that's actually, I think, deceptively good. That's a deceptively good record to have. Now, it might fall here as you have like even tougher road games going on, but 26-21, they are 2 games up now on their closest person trailing them, the Minnesota Timberwolves. 2 games up in the loss column and in the win column. On the Mavs now, they are on the heels of the Dallas Mavericks. They're on the heels of the Utah Jazz, who are plummeting at the moment. So Denver's starting to sort of round into form and starting to grab some of these wins. And then if you go back, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They've won now 11 of 16. Is that right? Yeah, 11 of 16. So they're getting a little bit of a groove going right now. They're 11-5 in their last 16. So they're getting a little bit of a groove going. New Orleans is on deck up next. A good, not great team. Kind of like it's a step up, certainly, from what they have been playing. Brooklyn, Detroit, or what have you. But I think that it's still a game where if they play just a little bit better, and I expect that they will, if they play just a little bit better than what they did tonight, a little bit more consistently, another example of a game where they can pick up a win. So weird schedule thing, and this has happened to Denver a few times. New Orleans played Tuesday, so they will end up having 3 days off to prepare for Denver, and then they play a back-to-back Denver and Boston. But so they will be a little bit more rested than Denver, but nonetheless, that's a game I think Denver will have a very good chance of. One, I think they, on 538, they're 0.5 point underdogs. That's not Vegas's line. That's just what 538 thinks. So basically, that's a fancy way of saying this should be a toss-up game. Alec Gwynn making fun of how I say Timberwolves. Can't help it, man. It's my one weird thing. So that's it. Any questions in the chat before we get out of here? 0.5 games away from the 5 seed. I'm telling you that 4 seed is in striking distance. The one thing about Utah is they have a pretty easy schedule in the back half as well. So Denver trying to chase them, Denver has a pretty easy schedule also, but Utah also, it'll be a little bit hard there. But man, Utah's just down bad right now. They're just not playing very well. It's a fragmented team. Denver, you hope, gets a boost, although as we've learned with the Golden State Warriors, you get Jamal Murray back, you might actually struggle for a little bit rather than get a boost as you sort of reintegrate him and get him back to it. So I'm really curious to see, what they look like. But I'm starting to get excited, starting to see the Nuggets percolate a little bit, starting to get some wins, starting to feel better and better about it. So Zamora says the 20th hardest strength of schedule left. The one I like is positive residual. And honestly, yes, 20th hardest, but when you talk about they have 4 more road games in a row, once you get past that road trip, then I think they might have the easiest once again. So it should get easy there. That does it for me, guys. Matt Moore is going to be back again tomorrow, bringing you an episode, and then I think we reconvene on Saturday or Fridays after the Nuggets take on the Pelicans. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Don't forget, if you are not a subscriber, join us on YouTube. You can watch the show live, submit questions to me in the chat and to Matt